All right. Good morning. I'd like to call the MPO Policy Committee meeting to order. As usual, this meeting is live streamed. And of course, members, for online attendees to hear, make sure you unmute your microphone when speaking and identify yourself when making a motion so the secretary can capture who's making the motion. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave. If you want to make a public comment, please fill out the public comment card and return it to a staff member. For those participating via Zoom, do us a favor, please keep your microphone muted unless you're called upon to speak. And when appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments from those online. And you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff is monitoring Zoom and will recognize you when it's your time to speak. And with that, Erin, would you please call the roll?
Sounds good. If the appointed member isn't in attendance this morning, if you would please identify yourself. I'll call the organization followed by the member name. IDOT Secretary Biaggi.
Here.
CDOT, Craig Turner.
Mary Nichols sitting in for Craig Turner.
Thank you. CMAP Frank Beal.
Present.
CMAP President Brawley. CTA Nora Learson.
Molly Poppy for CTA.
Thank you. Cook County Sis Killen.
Good morning. Tara Orban sitting in for Superintendent Killen.
Thank you. Council of Mayors, Mayor Schilke.
Jeff Shelkey, Mayor Batavia, sitting in as Chair of the Council of Mayors.
DuPage County Chair Conroy.
Steve Travia here for Chair Conroy.
FHWA Vershawn Tolliver.
John Paul Deepla, alternate for Vershawn Tolliver.
Thank you. FTA Kelly Brookins.
Mark Kane for Kelly Brookins.
Illinois State Toll Highway Authority Cassandra Rouse.
Present.
Kane County Chair Pirog. Kendall County Vice Chair Scott Gengler. Lake County Chair Hart.
Shane Schneider attending on behalf of Chair Hart.
McHenry County Chair Bueller.
Alicia Schuler attending on behalf of Chairman Bueller.
Thank you. Metra Jim Derwinski.
Lynette Civarella attending on Mr. Drowinski's behalf.
Thank you. PACE Chair Kwasniewski.
Eric Lawn for PACE, representing Chair Kwasniewski.
RTA Leanne Redden.
Jill Leary for RTA.
Will County Executive Bertino Tarrant. And Class 1 Railroads, Thomas Stevenson.
Tom Evenson here.
Great. We do have a quorum.
So, and as you've heard, we do have some folks who need a remote participation. So we have requests from Lake County, Cook County, and a couple of others to participate remotely in this meeting. These requests are made in compliance with the requirements of the Illinois Meetings Act, and a majority vote of this body is required. Can I get a motion to allow virtual participation?
So moved.
I have moved. Second? Second. Let's see. Do we have any additional edits or comments? No. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Let the record show that the members who are online and associated with Lake County, Cook County,
And
others,
Class 1 Railroads.
Class 1 railroads, are permitted to participate virtually in the MPO Policy Committee meeting. All right. Item 2.0, agenda changes and announcements. There are no changes or announcements with the agenda. And so I'll just take a minute to give an update on something that is happening at IDOT that is pretty exciting for us. You may have heard about a Blue Ribbon Commission on Transportation that was convened, or I guess was imagined a couple of years ago, but really started the hard work this past January. And it's a commission of legislators and advocates, most folks from the industry, from labor, who all convened to say, how can we build a better IDOT? How can we be more responsive to our customers, who are many of you? And how can we make sure that we're moving forward on multimodal policies, how we make sure we're spending our dollars quickly and a lot of them in the right places, all of those things. So we spent the last year looking under the hood at IDOT, and there's a Blue Ribbon Commission report that you can look at that has, it's organized under 5 objectives: project delivery, workforce, governance, equity, and sustainability. And underneath that, there are 27 recommendations. Underneath that, 113 sub-recommendations, which is really where the rubber meets the road, or the wheel meets the rail, what have you. And so what's very exciting is, we announced the report, it's published. You can get really know so much about IDOT and how we work and what we care about, what we're working on through that report. What I want to also let folks know is that it's not just a report. As we know, we generate a lot of reports, and those can sit on shelves, and it's great to get to the finish line in the report, but it's really a starting line for the work that we have to do. So we have launched the IDOT blueprint for the future. And so what this is a strategic action planning effort and implementation plan that we are developing at IDOT. So it's taking all of those recommendations. And if you ever had an interest in what we're doing or curious about it, you read that report, you can see where we're headed. We are actually engaging our entire organization in a planning effort that will turn those recommendations, all 113 of them, into probably about 20 work streams and working throughout the whole organization and inviting feedback from many of you throughout the process to really start getting to completion on these things. So across those recommendations, we've started about 59% of them, which is great, but that's just starting. So I just wanted to put on the table so you have a sense of some of the strategic work that we're doing. And so many of the issues that we talk about here at CMAP are nested right in there. And CMAP has been a great partner in helping us to better understand how we can better serve. So more from us on that, and we'll be very transparent about what we're doing and publishing, and hopefully the work that we do together is better amplified by this strategic action that we're taking. So thank you for suffering through a few minutes of me talking about that, but that's a lot of where our attention will be this year. Moving on, I have a second item that I wanted to announce. I guess these are announcements. As many of you know, to foster continued collaboration between our policy committee and the CMAP board, we have a memorandum of understanding that details how both boards commit to working together. One element of that is having a member of this body sit on that board, right? That's how we foster that communication. And so Leanne Redden has held that post for a number of years. And I'd like to thank her for serving as that connection between these two boards. Again, absolutely critical. But certainly we have we're in a major moment as RTA and the transit boards transition to NETA, RTA in particular. And so it's a good time right now to have a new overlapping member. So we'll be working on that. But in the interim, our Executive Director Alleman has agreed to serve in that role in the interim until we can figure out who's the right person to do that from our end. So I'm not necessarily asking for permission, but I'm informing you that we're going to do that until the time is right to appoint someone from this body there. So thank you, Aaron, for agreeing to do that. Okay. And then I guess my last announcement is I have to leave for a flight. So if I disappear from this meeting, apologies, and Vice President Rouse will take over from there. All right, item 3.0, approval of minutes. We have the minutes from January 8th, 2026. And I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from that date, January 8th, 2026.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Item 4.0, CMAP announcements.
Great. Thanks. Welcome to March. I think that based on the weather the past couple of days, we can say that March came in like a lion. We're hopeful that it goes out like a lamb, but also just thinking of our friends and fellow Illinoisans, not being an Illinoisan, that always trips me up. But having been here 20 years in Kankakee, I know that the photos and the storms were devastating down there. And I know that the state and our partners are probably helping with cleanup. And so that's a lot of work to do, but we wish them the best and are thinking of them here this morning. Thank you again, Secretary, for the update on the Blue Ribbon Commission. Thanks again to RTA for serving as the connection. I'm happy to serve in the interim period, again, just providing updates on what's going on with the board and making sure that the connection happens. Given the transition to NETA, we also need to update the MPO bylaws to make sure that they are in alignment with what's happening as well. And so between now and our next meeting, we will be reviewing the bylaws, talking to members, bringing a redlined version back to this committee for discussion and eventual approval. I do envision that we'll have a redlined version for your next meeting in June here. But just happy to share some updates from the CMAP team as we're well into the year, and it's been busy and productive to date. So in January, we brought you the draft UWP document. Since that time, the board approved the annual budget and work plan for fiscal year 2027, which starts on July 1 of this year. these documents together describe what we're doing in this next fiscal year, our state mandated and our federal responsibilities, and details of our funding, our revenues, our expenses, and really outlines what we're going to continue to do in the current year. Today, we'll be seeking your approval on our final UWP documents. In January, since we last met, we also hosted FHWA and FTA for our federally required certification review, which occurs every 4 years, to make sure that we're meeting our metropolitan planning rules and regulations overall. We received very positive initial feedback and anticipate that there will be no findings. A final report with recommendations is expected in the coming months, and we'll bring that back to both the CMAP board and to this body in the coming months. So we'll keep you informed on that. Also excited to share that our technical assistance program in partnership with the RTA will be releasing a call for projects starting Monday, March 30th and closing on April 17th. Awards are expected to be announced this summer, but this is our annual call for assistance for communities across the region so that we can help them achieve their goals. One thing I wanted to highlight from that is just a new line of service that you'll see in this year's application, which is node-oriented planning assistance. And so what is a node? It's a population center. It could be a university destination. It could be a medical district. We really want to help communities sort of amplify the places that they have and think about the transportation connections that are necessary to make those places successful. We'll have virtual open houses in April for folks, and we'll be sharing this information broadly. So if you know folks that have questions or are interested, we do encourage communities to listen in and engage with our staff before submitting an application. Also wanted to let you all know that the phase 1 data set from My Daily Travel will be or is now available. So between September 24th, 2024 and June of 2025, we continued to collect detailed travel data information about how people are moving across our region. We had about 3,500 households participate in the survey. This is the first post-pandemic survey data set that we have. So we are in the process of analyzing it. We'll have some policy briefs surrounding that, but it really is helping to inform the next regional transportation plan. But we want to thank our partners, many of you who are around this table, for getting the word out, for helping us make sure that we had a successful survey overall. And we're excited to dig into this data. Also relevant for this committee is we completed our Transportation Resiliency Improvement Plan, or TRIP, which is a first of its kind plan for this region, really looking at how we make our transportation system more resilient in the face of changing weather patterns. We developed this to meet the Federal Highway Administration's minimum requirements for resiliency under the PROTECT program, which hopefully after approval will mean that our projects will be able to be matched at a higher federal to local match. So more on that. We'll present an overview of the plan overall at a future board and MPO meeting. But in the meantime, again, because we have the regional transportation plan process underway, we will be incorporating the findings from that into the RTP as well. And then just finally, a preview of what we've got on our agenda today. We're going to begin with an overview of the Northern Illinois Transit Authority Act. We're also going to hear an update on the 2026 RTP Regional Transportation Plan and some draft strategies. And also some work underway to advance corridor-based congestion management planning. And then to wrap up, we also are still in progress of looking at key takeaways from the regional insights that we have been uncovering on the State of the Region report that you have at your place here. So I think that is a brief preview of our agenda this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions. Hearing none, I think we can move on.
Okay. Now on to item 4.03, Council of Mayors Executive Committee Report. Mayor, take it away.
Thank you. The Council of Mayors Executive Committee includes representatives from each of the 11 sub-regional councils. I chair the Council of Mayors. We met last week and we're glad to welcome a new member to the Council of Mayors, Mayor Scott Nichols from Round Lake Beach, representing the Lake County Council of Mayors. Our meeting focused on the Century Plan, including the State of the Region report, and we'll hear more about that this morning. We are also discussing CMAP's analysis of the goals and challenges highlighted in municipal and county planning documents. We hope that municipal managers and elected officials will join CMAP in a more in-depth conversation about those challenges when CMAP brings the discussion to the Council of Governments this spring. The Council of Mayors' next meeting will be in June. That's my report.
Thank you.
And I'll come back and give the CMAP board update here just next. CMAP board met on January 14th and yesterday. In these two meetings, the board approved a revised line of credit policy for the agency. We approved the TIP conformity analysis and the TIP amendments and the 2026 road safety targets, which you all saw at your January meeting. The board received and discussed the CMAP annual report. Again, we shared that with you in January. We accepted the FY25 financial audit, and we approved the FY27 proposed budget and work plan. So updates on the Century Plan, as Mayor Schilke mentioned, and the State of the Region report trends were also on the agendas. Again, you'll see similar conversations today. So that's the CMAP board report since the last meeting.
Look how smoothly Aaron noticed that I was out of order on the agenda. So thank you. Let's see. All right, 5.0 items for approval. 5.01, the FY 2027 Unified Work Program. Kama Dobbs, Principal.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Kama Dobbs, Principal in our Federal Transportation Funding Programs. As Erin mentioned in her updates at your January meeting, you approved the draft FY27 UWP. And since that time, the CMAP board did approve our CMAP budget and work plan. So that budget and work plan have been incorporated into the final FY27 UWP that's before you for approval today. We also did make updates to Appendix F of that document, which is documentation of non-UWP funded transportation planning activities in the region. For FY27, the UWP includes just under $35 million in both federal and matching funds that are allocated to CMAP and our partner agencies, which includes CDOT, the 11 councils of mayors, and our transit partners. These allocations include costs for both personnel and expenses as shown here. Those funds are allocated to the 6 core MPO activities and the fiscal year 27 competitive program as shown on the next slide. Those core activities are those that are required of us as the MPO for Northeastern Illinois and tend to be ongoing year after year tasks and expenses. While the competitive program includes funding for one-time transportation planning activities that support our core responsibilities. So with that quick update today, your approval of the FY27 UWP is requested so that staff may transmit that to IDOT and USDOT for approval.
All right. Thank you so much. I will entertain a motion to approve the FY 2027 Unified Work Program.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor. Second? Second. Second. Thank you, Mayor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6.0, information items. And first up, item 6.01, the NETA Act overview from Elizabeth Scott, Principal.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here to talk with you all a little bit about the work that CMAP has been doing, and certainly everyone in this room has been doing to help make the vision of the NETA Act signed by the governor at the end of last year a reality. And so there are a lot of moving pieces here, obviously. I want to acknowledge, as I'm sure this room is more aware than almost anyone, that this legislation is over 1,000 pages long. So there is some work to be done to figure out how that legislation becomes reality. And IDOT is hard at work with the governor's office, figuring out how we capacitate this process and get a transition consultant moving in the right direction. And then some work that we've been doing at CMAP is thinking about what are the other next step things that we need to be focused on and helping interpret, understand, discuss what are the next milestones that the region needs to consider and move through. And so in addition to the good work being done by IDOT and the governor's office in collaboration with RTA and the service boards, there is some work to be done by the appointing authorities, of whom you represent, not, you don't all represent them, but most of you do, to think about all of the individuals that will need to be appointed to the NEDA board and also the service boards. And so as part of that conversation, we've been trying to focus on what are the responsibilities that these individuals will need to oversee and help explain and interpret those things so that we can have a clear view of what the ambitious set of requirements laid out by the NEDA Act are. What is the timing of when these things are going to be happening? And to help prompt a conversation and greater understanding of the decisions that the individuals who need to be appointed over the next, let's say, 6 or 8 months will need to be making. So I think important piece of this is to understand fundamentally that the NEDA Act represents a major shift in the way our entire transit system is governed. It's not just a change at the RTA, it's also a change at the service boards. And we're all going to have to work together to understand what that means. But some of the top things that are going to be, new responsibilities that are created or better defined or expanded or centralized at NEDA include the responsibility for integrating fare systems and advancing the one network, one timetable, one ticket, user-oriented framework envisioned by the Act. That'll involve a lot around how can we get one system that works for everyone. There's going to be a lot more work that's already underway by Sheriff Dart and others to develop a new safety strategy and standards. Because we've heard from the region and heard throughout the legislative process that this is an issue of major concern to stakeholders. A very tough nut to crack, though, that the service boards have been working diligently at. I think it's also important to acknowledge. Another piece of what is anticipated to happen is planning for service standards will be standardized at NEDA, and then eventually in a 2030 and beyond timeframe, the way that the service that's put on the street will be programmed will be related to this sort of central idea of how we can make all of these tools work together better. Strategic and capital planning, I think, will be strengthened in NEDA. Capital prioritization will be centralized into NEDA, and in some cases, NEDA will do capital construction. There'll be centralized bond authority, and then there's a greater clarity and some expanded pieces around joint development and TOD. And so all of this is to bring the planning, bring the strategic, bring the conceptual things together at NEDA, but it is an ambitious work plan that this agency is going to be undertaking. And so the people who are there advising, guiding, overseeing the work of this group is going to matter tremendously. Next slide, please. So just to talk about these things in a little bit more detail, acknowledging that there are people in this room who have greater depth of knowledge of all of these issues than I do. We're talking first about fares, and before I get into that, throughout these couple of slides that we're sharing, there are a few elements on the slides. One is that we put little dollar signs along the things that we are anticipating will have new costs. This is part of the financial modeling that we did in the Plan of Action for Regional Transit to help the region come to the $1.5 billion number for what the legislation should raise for transit. So there are things that need to be done that will have costs that are, generally speaking, user-oriented, experience-oriented improvements, because the financial vision of the NEDA Act is to both invest in improvements that will be rider-serving and reserve resources to dedicate to more service, to more frequency. So keep an eye on the pieces that have the dollar signs, because that's part of this. We know that they'll have costs, but keeping an eye on the costs is going to be important. And on the bottom, we've included some timeline dates, not necessarily to emphasize any one date excessively, but just to say that over the next 2 years and the next 5 years, there are a lot of requirements in the legislation, and they're going to just keep coming. So in terms of fair policy integration and affordability, the Fair Policy Authority will be centralized into NEDA. There's some work to be done thinking about how our existing low income and student-oriented or for victims of domestic violence programs perhaps can be consolidated into a regional fair affordability program, thinking about what a more integrated fair approach looks like, and then introducing the idea of fare capping, or that if someone uses transit a certain amount in the month, there is a dollar amount past which they will no longer continue to pay. You know, kind of a get yourself to a pass type of a strategy. Next slide, please. There's a lot to be done on safety and security. As I said, Sheriff Dart's office is already convening people to talk about this series of activities that has to be done to do some planning to figure out what is a crime prevention program and sort of long-term safety strategy that can sit at NEDA that will meet stakeholders' expectations. The individuals on the NEDA board will have to vote in 2027 whether or not to create a sworn officer program at NEDA with the information that will be provided through the safety and security process laid out in the Act. So that's an important one. There's also provisions in the Act to enable the introduction of transit ambassadors, which CMAP recommended in the PART report, and we're very excited about. Some front door people to help people use transit feel more welcome, navigate it, keep sort of like eyes on the street or eyes on the train, as I guess it may be. And then there's also some thinking around how it might be appropriate for NEDA to reimburse local governments for services that they're providing to provide security to transit. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, another huge thing that's happening is that the Act has an ambition for us to do all of our planning and strategy in a central system. So rather than the RTA coordinating a process by which each of the service boards bring their plan to the table and integrate them, the idea is to plan in an integrated way from the beginning. So this is a lot of planning work that's going to have to be done to figure out what is a performance-based regional planning, integrated regional planning system for transit that is going to work for us as a region and leverage our assets, and also have an understanding of what some of our trade-offs and limitations are. So this is going to be a tough job. The NEDA board will also have to give advice on whether or not they like the direction of what is being developed in this space. And the concept is that sort of in the 2030s and beyond, it is this regional strategy that will then drive service. So that's going to be important. Next slide. There's some change to capital planning and implementation. RTA has always done a 5-year capital plan, or for a long time has done capital planning on behalf of the system. That'll continue, but there'll be some strengthening there, where major capital projects as defined by, big enough to be in the regional transportation plan, which you're going to hear about next, will be handled by NEDA going forward, and figuring out exactly what that looks like is going to be another piece of this work. But things where there's an expansion or something like that would be handled at NEDA, which is a change. Next slide. And then finally, the legislation specifically calls out for NEDA joint development powers. It also requires some TOD-oriented activities, I think, which have already begun at RTA. They've already begun work on all of this to figure out what properties could be good potential to do some transit-oriented development within the region's transit service area. There are some concepts in the Act about increasing pedestrian access to transit in local communities. Perhaps there could be a reimbursement process to make sidewalks go to the train station and so forth, make all of that work better. And as I'm sure you all are aware, the Act also includes the people over parking components, which makes some significant changes to local communities' ability to impose parking minimums in TOD areas. So all of this together creates, I think, a lot of potential for what a TOD program at NIDA could look like, you know, to continue to grow on the work that has been happening here for a long time. But again, a lot of these things have new costs. Next slide. And so to reemphasize kind of what I was saying at the top is that we believe that in 2027, this legislation will add $1.25 billion to the transit's operating budget. There's a large amount of that that's going to be taken solving our structural deficit, which was job one for this whole undertaking. So that's understood. But then there's about $500 million expected that is the new money that can help us achieve the vision of NIDA. And so keeping an eye on how the new costs come to the table is going to be really, really important, because there are things that the legislation requires that have to be done that have costs. That's real. But the money that is the delta between the, you know, paying for our structural deficit and the new costs, that not leftovers, that's the wrong way to think about it, but the additional funding that's available is what will be available to use to expand frequency, expand service, which is the fundamental thing that people say that they want, and part of how transit can provide value. So keeping an eye on this balance is going to be important as we go forward into the implementation of NIDA, and it's going to be an important responsibility of the individuals who end up being appointed. So with all of this in mind, there's a lot to do, and there's some very tough timelines. Let's go to the next section where we're talking about the new regional transit governance structure and kind of what has to happen between now and September. Next slide. So the NIDA board will be 5-5-5-5, governor, mayor, Cook County board president, and then the Collier County board chairs or executives. But something that is interesting and was part of what was envisioned in the you guys will maybe all remember the option 2 from the plan of action from regional transit. Was thinking about how can you create better communication between these different sets of responsibilities in the regional transit system. So most of these individuals will be dual appointed to one of the service boards as well, although not all of them. So the 5 is not as simple as that, and we'll get into it in a second. But key dates, the NIDA Act is effective June 1st, and it requires that all board members be seated by September 29th of this year. The rules are requiring that I think in all cases, whatever is appropriate for the individual appointers, there's an advice and consent process. So there's some timing issues that need to be considered here on how this is moved forward. But just to keep in mind, these are the dates. Next slide, please. And because nobody can figure out how to visualize this in a way that makes sense to everyone, we made a color picture and then also some lists. And so you'll see this dual appointment playing out here as well. So the governor has 3 that sit on NIDA board and CTA and Metra and PACE, 2 that just sit on NIDA board, and 1 that will sit on the CTA board. Similarly, you know, the mayor has things configured, you know, all configured in the same way. And then next slide, as does Cook County and then the Collars. If anybody sees any problems with this, please say so, because it's a little complicated to map out. Tom Rickert already caught a small problem previously, so that's all good now. But it's it's a little complicated. So we're trying to write it down so we can have clarity and everybody can understand what's necessary. So this is a lot of individuals all to be appointed at the same time. And for some of them, they'll be sitting on 2 boards. It's a big time commitment. So that's a lot to think about. Next slide, please. And, you know, so that this all sort of comes together, going back to the colors, in a lot of individuals, some of whom will be having dual appointments, some of whom will only be sitting on the service boards, and some of whom, in the case of the governor's appointments, will only be on the NIDA board. And so this is a big change, like I said, not just at RTA, but at the service boards as well. Next slide, please. And as you all are thinking about what, what kind of individuals should be brought forward, there are also some requirements in the Act to keep in mind. That the director should have diverse and substantial relevant experience or expertise in transit planning, operations, and funding. The Act gives some examples of what could qualify for that, and I won't read them to you, but it's, I think, what you would expect. It is includes, not limited to, but also it requires that appointments should strive to reflect the ethnic, cultural, economic, racial, and geographic diversity of the region. So putting all of these things together, it's a lot to think about and a lot of work to do. So we just wanted to give you some of this information and emphasize this piece of it, as it's the sort of next most important thing the region has to do to move this forward. And those are my slides.
All right. Do we have questions that could even be answered?
Maybe. Yes, Mayor.
I'd like to make a couple comments. I am very impressed that we are doing this, and it needs to be done because I'm coming from a region that is experiencing growth of a magnitude of which we have not seen before. As you know, I'm the mayor of Batavia, and in the last 4 years or 5 years since 2020, between 2022 and 2026, we will have added over 1,000 new living units to our community. And the driving force for that type of activity, we've never had it before. Probably the biggest one is our proximity to the Illinois Tollway Authority, specifically I-88. It's joins kind of in almost to our town down at the south. And then I recently had a conversation with the mayor of Hampshire, Illinois, and he's up at the northwest corner of Kane County, right by where 90 has just put its interchange in at Route 47. Well, he's telling me that Hampshire has just added 2,800 new single-family home lots to their community inventory to be built on in the next few years. So you're going to have this kind of dynamic growth. So I've had the opportunity, because I've got almost over 400 of these houses have now are under construction or have been built in Batavia, and I have these people showing up in my office asking questions. So I asked some questions back, specifically, why did you move here? And the proximity of Batavia to the tollway is probably number one. And then we're very close to the commuter station in Geneva and the commuter station in Aurora, so you can take one or the other line. And I think the world has really recognized the value of the transportation system that we have in the Chicagoland area. And I applaud all those who are sitting in this room and who are other places to do it. I'll be very anxious to see how this new board unfolds itself and sees where we go here, because there's some dynamics that are taking place right now that are going to put a significant demand on the amount of service that's going to be needed.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think that you're absolutely right. The dynamics are intense, I think, on all levels here. But I also wanted to create an opportunity if any of the transit boards who are represented here wanted to add anything. It's okay if you don't, because we're in constant conversations about this. Well, any other comments or questions from anyone on this? Go ahead.
Yes, I'll just make a quick comment on behalf of the Illinois Tollway. We look forward, thank you for the overview of the NIDA report and from an Illinois Tollway perspective, and also thank you, Mayor, for your comments as well. We look forward at the Tollway of, continuing to work with NIDA, the NIDA board, the new executive director upon appointment, just to continue to make sure that we are in support in advancing just the goals and priorities of NIDA. So more to come, but thank you.
Any other comments or questions now? So thank you, because it is a complex undertaking, and I think that's the best representation or diagram of the board appointments. So thank you for that. That was very helpful. And just to put a finer point on it, I think the work of CMAP has been so important in getting this, and others, many others in this room, even who really helped make sure this happened. And so again, this will take all of us pulling on the same rope in the same direction in order to get this done. So thank you for the analysis. Right.
Secretary.
Yo, I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead.
I just wanted to, can you give us any insight into the timeline for the contract?
Yeah, as soon as
been-
possible.
What?
As soon as possible. We certainly, we look at those timelines.
Insight.
Yeah, so, well, obviously, you have the September deadline in order to have everything up and running. You have June that is upon us shortly. So we're working in earnest to make sure we can get that scope of work. First, it has to be right. And so it's a lot to take on. You saw the many components. So it's important to us that we take the time that we need to make sure it's right. But our goal is to get that out on the street as soon as possible. Shortly, we hope that folks will be hearing about this. So if that's something you're interested in, start paying attention. All right. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have item 6.02 on the Regional Transportation Plan, RTP update from Ryan Tomto. And at this moment, I'll have to excuse myself. I have to catch a plane. My colleague, Mike Vanderhoof from IDOT will represent us, and I'll pass the chair responsibilities to Vice Chair Rouse. Thank you.
Thank you. Safe travels.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Ryan Tomto. I use he, him pronouns. I am a principal policy analyst here at CMAP. And I'm here to provide an update on progress to develop the 2026 Regional Transportation Plan. I do want to note I'll be joined here shortly by Julie Rushke, who is the project manager of that effort. And kind of there's three main things we want to focus in on. One is going to be to just provide a general update of progress underway. The second will be to share out strategies that have been identified for inclusion in the RTP. There also have been included in your agenda packet. And then the third is to share a list of proposed priority projects to be included as part of the plan. So to get into the kind of general update of where things are at, as you can see on this slide, there are a lot of moving pieces happening right now. Want to note a few highlights. Again, a major work stream underway has been strategy development, and we'll be hearing more about that here shortly. Also want to note that we have continued to be meeting with stakeholders and with the public. That continues on. Julie and I were actually just in Will County meeting with townships to learn about their specific issues and maintaining the roadways at that level of government. We've also been releasing a series of short videos that profile individuals throughout the region to kind of put a human face to the concepts and the challenges that we've been learning about through the development process. We also have two critical pieces of work that have been or that are progressing towards the finish line. That includes the prioritization process of both the RCPs and the priority list of projects, as well as the completion of the financial plan. And this is all really leading up to the draft plan. We are drafting chapters right now, so the writing has already begun. But the goal is to have this list of priority projects and the constrained list of projects in a kind of more finalized state after today's meeting, so that we can release it, or so that we can conduct the various federal analyses that we're required to do, such as air quality conformity that's required under the Clean Air Act, and non-discrimination analysis required under Title VI. And then that's all going to come back in June, where we'll take all the feedback that we've heard from the board, from this group today, the results from those analyses that we have done, as well as the draft plan and appendices, to ask you all for approval to release it for public comment, with the intent of bringing it back for consideration for adoption in October of 2026. And I think Also just want to note that the draft constrained project list is in your packet. I'm not going to go into too much details. It hasn't changed much since we shared it at your previous meeting. But want to note that it is there, and then I'll get more in depth on the priority projects towards the later half of the presentation. But with that, I will hand it over to Julie to walk us through strategies.
Good morning, everybody. Julie Reschke, Senior Policy Analyst here at CMAP. Included in your agenda packet today is a draft list of strategies proposed for inclusion in the RTP. The strategies and their respective descriptions are intended to be flexible enough to allow future implementation efforts to take shape as needed, but still provide clarity about the types of transportation actions and outcomes the RTP process has determined are needed. Today, I'll provide an overview of the list and the nature of strategies that are included. So as a reminder, the RTP will be guided by a structure of goals, objectives, and strategies. Goals are broad, long-term, and aspirational, defining the end result at a high level. Objectives add a layer of specificity and can be measured, and strategies describe how the region will achieve the objectives. Around this time last year, the RTP published the Emerging Priorities Report, which identified 5 preliminary goal areas and their respective objectives based on early research and stakeholder feedback. We continue to build off this foundation to identify proposed RTP strategies, which will be the focus of my presentation today. The draft strategies were informed by a number of inputs from throughout the RTP process. They include stakeholder feedback, including from governing bodies like this one. Other critical sources of feedback include resource groups, industry associations, community groups, advocacy organizations, and residents. Research and analysis has also provided valuable insights into topics like asset management, emerging technologies, and potential new revenue sources. And lastly, collaboration with ongoing projects like the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan and the Congestion Management Strategy has helped carry over strategies from other regional consensus-driven planning efforts. Okay, so for the remainder of my slides today, we'll walk through the draft strategies of each of the goal areas that were identified in the Emerging Priorities Report. Since there are over 50 draft strategies that were included in your agenda packet, we won't have time to walk through every single one, but I'll pause on each of the 5 goal areas on the screen and speak to the strategies at a high level. Okay. So this first goal area is focused on improving regional mobility, and because of that, the draft strategies are very multifaceted, spanning topics like congestion, multimodal travel options, and universal accessibility. Travel reliability is emphasized with strategies focusing on complementary actions like proactive asset management, comprehensive corridor planning, and measures to manage travel demand and improve operations. Moving more trips from driving to other modes like transit and active transportation is also critical to improving regional mobility. The draft strategies highlight the need for integrated and responsive transit services, including through regional rail and speeding up buses. In addition to providing last-mile connections to these transit services, connected networks of bike and pedestrian infrastructure also play a critical role in regional mobility. Achieving universal accessibility to the region's transportation infrastructure and services is also identified as an essential measure. Together, these strategies are intended to build upon Northeastern Illinois' transportation strengths by making regional trips more reliable, accessible, and multimodal. This goal area is dedicated to improving traffic safety outcomes. Strategies focus on reducing people's exposure to risks that could result in serious or fatal crashes. Building off the countywide safety action plans that were adopted last year, strategies recommend developing a regional safe systems framework and integrating complete streets principles into transportation planning, policy, and design. Recognizing the major role that speeding has on traffic safety, there are also strategies dedicated to better managing speeds on our roadways, including by setting speed limits that are appropriate to local contexts and integrating transportation tools and design approaches that calm traffic flow. Critically, strategies recommend prioritizing safety investments where we see disproportionate risk and harm, including through measures like protected bike and pedestrian infrastructure, systemic improvements at intersections and railroad crossings, and data-informed decision-making. These strategies have the potential to make Northeastern Illinois' transportation system more safe and comfortable for a wide variety of road users, literally saving lives in the process. As we know, the transportation system plays a critical role in our environment and climate resilience goals. Recognizing this relationship, strategies focus on reducing emissions through measures like electrifying both cars and trucks, shifting more trips from driving to lower emission options like transit, walking, and biking, and targeting investments to improve air qualities in areas with the highest exposure to transportation-related pollution. Additionally, strategies emphasize opportunities to make the regional transportation system more resilient to extreme weather like high temperatures and intense storms that result in recurring flooding. And lastly, strategies recognize the transportation system's role in protecting our environment by limiting expansion into natural areas and reducing runoff that degrades our water quality. With the transportation sector being one of the top contributors to regional greenhouse gas emissions, these strategies can help make Northeastern Illinois more resilient to the effects of climate change. Transportation is also the backbone of our regional economy, which relies on the efficient movement of both people and goods. Strategies recognize the regional transportation system's role in facilitating the movement of people not only within the region, but from across the world. Strong multimodal connections to modes like aviation and intercity bus and rail can support greater economic prosperity and further elevate Northeastern Illinois as an international transportation hub. Additionally, efforts like transit-oriented development and affordable multimodal options foster vibrant local communities and connect residents with jobs, education, and a wide variety of essential services. Local economies throughout the region also benefit from the efficient movement of goods, which is strongly powered by Northeastern Illinois' freight network. To promote the efficiency and reliability of freight in the region, strategies focus on mitigating congestion, improving last-mile delivery, and fostering safe travel for truck drivers and more. Together, this diverse mix of strategies has the potential to augment economic prosperity for both residents and businesses across the region. Okay, and finally, this goal area identifies opportunities to improve regional coordination around critical transportation assets, operations, and revenues. Making progress on modernizing infrastructure and achieving a state of good repair is especially crucial for maintaining the region's transportation strengths. As a legacy system that has benefited from generations of investment, strategies focus on enhancing regional coordination to address aging infrastructure. Specific approaches include streamlined project delivery, performance-based planning, and data-driven investment decisions. To address these significant needs, strategies also identify revenue opportunities such as a road usage charge, tolling, and other durable revenues that grow with the economy and align with recent changes in travel behavior. Fiscal excellence also hinges on the region's ability to monitor and prepare for emerging technologies. And sometimes technologies that have long been on the horizon can quickly rise to the forefront. As a recent example, news about Waymo's presence in Chicago has raised questions about automated vehicles in the region. As Northeastern Illinois navigates these new spaces, strategies emphasize the need to prioritize efficient operations, fiscal sustainability, and outcomes that provide a high quality of life for residents. With that, I'll turn it back to Ryan to talk about priority investments.
Thanks, Julie. So for priority investments, want to note that this is an innovation that we've included this planning cycle. And on the next slide, we kind of start getting into the history of that a bit. So to understand why we developed this list, it helps go back to 2022 when federal partners conducted a formal review of the region's transportation planning process. This is what is called the certification review. That review included specific recommendation that our universe of major projects should be more focused so that the plan can clearly identify and prioritize the most critical projects and direct resources towards getting them completed. The review also flagged that our previous project thresholds were capturing a large number of arterial roadway projects that didn't always reflect the region's highest priorities or its multimodal goals. In short, our federal partners want to know which projects deliver the greatest regional benefits so that those projects can be positioned to compete for federal discretionary funding. But the push for a sharper priority list didn't just come from the federal government alone. Business and civic leaders that we engage with throughout the development of the RTP have told us that a concise, compelling list of top priorities would be a powerful tool for building public support and political momentum, including when new revenues are needed to be able to make these projects ultimately happen. And community groups and advocacy organizations have told us something equally important, that past plans, including Go to 2040 and Onto 2050, focused heavily on those large-scale projects, costly projects, and didn't really focus in on the smaller scale projects that, while individually might not provide regional scale benefits, when looked at as a collective group of investments, they're incredibly important to make sure we are able to advance our regional goals. So we heard these messages, and the list that I will present helps try to reflect that. So this is showing how we try to respond to that feedback. We developed what we're calling an enhanced prioritization framework. So just a few reminders. I know it's pretty recent, but just to remind us how we got here. Last year, CMAP invited partner agencies, so these folks in the room here, to submit transportation projects they believe the region should consider for inclusion in the plan. These are projects that are occurring between now through the horizon year of the plan, which is 2050. To keep the focus on investments with truly regional significance, projects must meet a size threshold. So for this process, we updated that to make sure we were adhering to our Clean Air Act requirements, so that we changed the threshold for any capacity increasing project on the national highway system that's a mile or more, and any project that costs $250 million or more. So really at this stage, we're casting a wide net. We're trying to get an understanding of what the region needs and what's currently planned. So then next, once all those projects were submitted, CMAP conducted a rigorous evaluation of each of those projects. So every project is assessed on 3 dimensions. First, it's focused on current need. This is looking at things like deteriorating infrastructure, chronic congestion, and safety issues. Second, we look at future performance. So using our travel demand model, geospatial tools, and our population forecasts, we determine how much the project actually improves the system by 2050 in terms of things like commute times, job access, and transit ridership. Third, alignment with regional goals. So does the project support things like inclusive growth, infill development, air quality, resiliency, and a stronger regional economy? The result is an evidence-based, transparent, and outcomes-focused process. So after we have all those projects evaluated, we then have to go on to determine which projects can actually be fiscally constrained in the plan. So as a reminder, fiscal constraint means that we have to be able to demonstrate that sufficient revenues exist or can be reasonably expected to exist within the plan horizon to be able to pay for all the projects that we include in the plan. Using the evaluation results, coupled with feedback provided from our transportation partners and the public, projects are divided into constrained and unconstrained lists. So constrained projects are eligible to receive federal transportation funds. They can apply for federal environmental approvals, and they can move forward through development and construction processes. So those projects that are on the unconstrained list can still move forward with planning studies and learning more about what's needed to make the project happen, but it cannot apply for federal funding for right-of-way or construction. It cannot receive federal approvals for the environmental phase and aren't able to proceed to construction. And so in this kind of part where we're at right now is really where Go to 2040 and Onto 2050 stopped. It was, you made it onto the constrained list, you were considered a priority, or you were put on the unconstrained list. So the innovation this cycle is the inclusion of what we're calling the priority investments list. And so this list represents the projects that of all of the projects on the constrained list, which of them rise to the level of providing kind of more transformational, significant regional benefits? So this isn't to say there's many projects, important projects on the constrained list that provide significant localized benefits, but this priority investments list is meant to be able to better communicate to various partners which of the projects on the constrained list are going to deliver the most benefits for the most people within the region. So you'll note that this graphic does, oh, sorry, we go back to the previous slide. The graphic does also include programs. So we've been referring to these, and up to this point, there's priority projects, which represent the RCPs, the priorities of that list. But we also have what we've been referring to as priority programs. So when combined, these are what we're including on a priority investments list. And so the next slide is where I'll get more into what this priority program is. So these priority programs are broader categories of investment that may not be a single project, but represent a consistent type of investment that delivers significant regional benefits. This concept was piloted in our Northeastern Illinois Priority Investments booklet, and is something that many of our peer regions have included in their RTPs. And it's relatively new, though, of a new concept for inclusion in our region. But we do think it gives a much richer way for us to be able to communicate about priorities in the plan. So these programs were identified through various planning initiatives, such as the congestion management strategy work, the climate action plan, the transportation resiliency improvement plan, safety action plans, those sorts of initiatives. Through the financial plan, we've been able to quantify many of the costs associated with these programs so that the plan can speak to them in greater specificity. The vision is for the 2026 RTP to include a dedicated priority investments chapter that showcases these projects and programs in a highly visual and accessible way. And we're also thinking carefully about how CMAP and our partners might use this list beyond communicating it in the RTP itself. For example, it could serve as a framework for helping to direct CMAP's own resources. That can mean developing one-pagers or letters of support, providing technical assistance, or engaging more deeply with a project, whether that's having CMAP staff serve on a steering committee, all the way up to things like the I-290 Blue Line Corridor Development Office type of initiative. So with all that kind of background, I'll now go right into the list or the proposed list of projects. Includes 15 priority investments that span a wide range of project types and scales, from corridor-specific projects like I-90, I-94, Kennedy reconstruction, Randall Road corridor improvements, to multimodal programs like transit station accessibility and connected sidewalks and bikeways. A few things worth noting. First, we presented this list to the Regional Capital Projects Resource Group, or RCP Resource Group, where it was well received by members. Then we presented at the February Transportation Committee meeting, where we had received significant public comment regarding the inclusion of North DeSable Lakeshore Drive project. That project is jointly led by the Illinois Department of Transportation and the Chicago Department of Transportation. For some more context, the North DeSable Lakeshore Drive project has been included as a fiscally constrained project in the past two planning cycles, so in 2018 and 2022. That project improves safety, mobility, and accessibility to and from adjacent communities for all users of all modes. While having a project on the priority investment list indicates it is a regional priority, project details are really shaped more at the local planning process that are facilitated by the implementing agencies. So for more information about the North DeSable Lakeshore Drive project, as well as all the other projects here on the list, the agenda packet includes more details for each of those. Let's see. So that brings me to next steps in the process. Kind of talked about that at the start, but to revisit, today we're looking to receive any feedback you might have on the draft list of constrained projects, as well as this priority investment list. Following today's meeting, CMAP will begin the federally required air quality conformity and non-discrimination analyses. Results from these analyses, along with board and MPO feedback, will be incorporated in the draft RTP, and then we'll be back to present on that in June prior to releasing it for public comment. and then coming back for final adoption in October of 2026. So that concludes my update. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I will just ask the committee, are there any questions that can be addressed at this time? Doesn't seem to be. Well, thank you, Ryan, for the update on the RTP, the projects, and also highlighting the next steps.
Thank you.
So at this time, we will move on to 6.3, where Alex will present an update on the congestion management process. Alex.
There we are.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We go to the next slide, please. So again, I'm Alex Beata. I serve as Director in the Regional Policy and Implementation Division here at CMAP. My remarks today will touch on the topic of corridor planning for congestion management. I know that CMAP staff have been before this committee, as well as the Transportation Committee before on this topic over the past several months, discussing the congestion management process or CMP update. As a brief reminder, the CMP is a federal requirement for larger MPOs like CMAP. Today, I won't revisit much of that prior material, but instead we'll focus on some recent actions that we've completed, as well as anticipated next steps. Moving to the next slide, I will provide a brief overview of two recent deliverables from our CMP update effort, both of which are now publicly available on the CMAP website. Although before I do that, I would like to again thank the organizations, many of the organizations around the table here today, for your support over the last year and a half or 2 years through our resource group. That's been a very key body to help guide CMAP staff through the process as we updated the congestion management process. All right, getting into the meat of it with a little bit of stage setting here. Our CMP update followed the 8-step process as recommended by the Federal Highway Administration. It's a very linear and logical process, beginning with the identification of objectives and the CMP network, performance measures, and so forth. Today, I'm really zooming in on that 6th step, which is the identification of strategies to manage congestion. All right, next slide, please. So our two deliverables really zero in on that. The first of the two is the Congestion Management Strategy Guidebook. That's intended as a resource for transportation agencies, local governments, and other planning partners. Collectively, these stakeholders are responsible for identifying, evaluating, and implementing congestion management strategies. It's really a key theme that emerged from the resource group process, that congestion management truly is a shared responsibility across the region. One of the centerpieces of our guidebook is the image shown here on the right. It's this concept of a mobility solutions ladder, as we like to call it. It's a fairly intuitive construct. The idea is to first prioritize strategies such as mode shift or VMT reduction before moving on towards capacity expansion as the response to congestion. So the guidebook itself provides more detail on each strategy at the various rungs of this ladder, describing the benefits, defining terms, and providing examples of successful deployment both locally and elsewhere. Next slide, please. The second of the two deliverables is the Comprehensive Corridor Study Template. We see this as a complement to the strategy guidebook. The template here provides guidance for planning and implementing strategies at the corridor level. It's designed as a one-stop resource to help agencies and their consultant support in structuring and executing future studies. It also includes extensive links to relevant technical resources to hopefully give everyone a running start at completing that technical work. I did want to mention that the template pays particular attention to engagement needs, acknowledging that congestion management requires a comprehensive toolbox that no single agency or stakeholder can fully address. It also acknowledges the need for implementation planning with the goal of bringing recommendations from study to reality. That's a perfect bridge to the next section of my remarks, this idea of a corridor planning approach. So this is also the place where I switch gears from our recent deliverables to anticipated next steps. So moving to the next slide, in some of the later meetings of the resource group, this idea of a pilot study was discussed and seen to have some potential. A pilot, of course, is an opportunity to kick the tires a little bit. We see this as a place to apply the strategy guidebook and the corridor study template in a real-world setting. with consideration for other critical regional goals like safety and resilience. I was charmed to see the emoji there. That caught me by surprise. It's an opportunity to convene partners early on in the process as well. That's something we heard loud and clear, the importance of getting not only agencies, but community members to the table early on. That helps to identify the challenges that a corridor may face, as well as opportunities, and to start that vetting process early. Overall, the goal here is to set the stage. So we see this as a point of clarification, truly as a planning study, planning maybe with a capital P, so to speak. So in that sense, it's more of a feasibility, a concept development exercise. It's not the formal IDOT project development process. It's a precursor to that process. So the idea is that it can help do some of that stage setting to then tee up future phase one preliminary engineering studies. And again, as with any pilot, this approach allows for lessons learned and, if viewed as successful, hopefully expansion to other locations throughout the region. So that's, again, a good segue to the next slide. Speaking of locations, we wanted to start that process as well at the staff level. So last summer, we completed internally a high-level analysis to start gauging potential locations for a potential pilot study. The focus here was intentionally narrowed to the arterial network. That was in recognition of ongoing planning and project development activities underway on the expressway network. So focusing on the arterial network only, our approach was relatively simple. We recognize that there's a bit of an art and a science to this sort of activity. So we started with the science, so to speak. We identified arterial locations in the top quintile across 3 different measures of travel time reliability. And it's a bit of a methodological side note, but travel time reliability was seen as the preferred way to understand and measure congestion rather than more traditional metrics of delay. So that was feedback from our resource group applied here. So we looked across 3 different metrics in both the morning and afternoon peak periods. The result is what you see on the map to the right. We then applied the art, so to speak, with an attempt to link together these smaller links into more coherent corridors with logical termini. We also removed corridors that we knew had extensive existing planning efforts already underway. And throughout this process, we collected quite a bit of other supporting data, both on the transportation performance of those locations, any potential connections to other major regional initiatives, such as our safety work and our resilience work, and plan and program improvements from prior study. The fruit of that labor is shown on the next slide here. The result was a total of 16 arterial corridors across the region. We sort of informally broke this into 3 categories, what we call a more traditional suburban arterial. You see that in more of the collar counties. Multi-use urban corridors in the core of the region, as the name suggests, in the city and in nearby suburbs. And then 2 examples of limited access arterials. So these are less common in our region, but there are places where an arterial has limited access or great separation at key intersections. These facilities range widely in length, as you can see, simply from the map itself, as well as traffic volume. In addition, they are all state jurisdiction facilities, although some are maintained by other agencies. To the next slide, please. So from that menu, we did quite a bit of engagement with the resource group, with the transportation committee, a series of one-on-one conversations internally and externally to consider which location is perhaps best suited for a pilot. The result of that effort was Cicero Avenue from 55th Street to 167th Street in Cook County as the selected location. We selected Cicero Avenue for many reasons. First, of course, being its degree of congestion and unreliable travel times, which I imagine comes as no surprise to most of the folks around the table. But in addition to that, Cicero is identified as a location with significant crash history. The combination of the 2 motivated a lot of interest from agencies, from IDOT, from transit agencies, and from corridor communities. So we spoke with both the Southwest and South Council of Mayors. They were very excited to have some planning attention given to this corridor. And then one last note, CMAP, of course, is not only a transportation agency, but a land use agency. And uniquely in this case, the corridor is bookended by potential significant land use change to the north at Fort City and to the south at the Oak Forest Hospital. So that was something we had in mind as well. So moving on to next steps on the following slide, we will initiate a procurement process to bring aboard a technical team to help us with the work itself. In the meantime, we'll continue our outreach efforts both to communities and to agencies. That's already begun, and we'll also do some early research at the staff level to better acquaint ourselves with the local context. Once we get a team under contract, the work will begin in earnest, and I'm sure we'll be reporting back to this and other bodies as that work gets underway. And as a closing note, if you're eagle-eyed, you may have noticed the RTP logo and so forth on my slides. We do see this as a sort of a sister effort in some ways to the regional transportation plan development, and expect corresponding material on congestion management to be sort of memorialized in the RTP itself, acknowledging that work as an important regional priority. So a bit of a whirlwind tour. Thank you for sticking with me this late in the agenda as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'm very much, Alex. I did have one question before I open it up also to the rest of the committee. From a planning consideration standpoint, can you just kind of talk us through or talk me through directly how equity was considered as you went through the process?
Sure. So I briefly mentioned in the art and science slides, we did quite a bit of data collection. A lot of that was sort of nuts and bolts of transportation, but we included other planning factors. One of which was whether the corridors intersected with the economically disconnected area layer that CMAPs use as sort of a proxy for some equity concerns. So that was one sort of formal ingredient. Cicero is a corridor that serves diverse communities, both in the city of Chicago and inner ring suburban Cook County. So I think there's a lot of potential to consider these factors through a corridor study process. I would also say that Cicero is a corridor that I believe has a lot of upside potential for transit ridership. It's served as well, today by both CTA and PACE, but it has opportunity to grow. The built environment there supports transit, but there could be some more investment to really take it to the next level. So just a few immediate thoughts in response to that question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to open up to the committee. Are there any other comments?
I have one if I could.
Yes, please.
I'm questioning what you did a very good program. I mean, I'm approving of everything you're doing here. I question though your map of who's getting what here, because you got one county showing on this map that's not part of the RTA sales tax area, and that's been a loud problem since the day when the RTA was created, and Kendall County didn't want to be part of it. And so now we've got Kendall County shown to be part of this whole thing. Is there any proposals that are going to be enacted to get them to pay their share of the tax on this thing, or what's happening with that?
Sure, it's a good question. At the moment, we are, of course, just starting with a pilot, and we'll see how that goes when we kick the tires. The map that was shown here, I might expect to be more of a living document over time as data is refreshed and so forth. The extent to which transit is able to be a partner, to your point, in Kendall County is maybe a bit of a separate question that we would broach if we were doing a corridor study in Kendall County. But at the moment, we're taking incremental steps to see how things go and build some capacity within the agency.
Well, as the mayor of one of the towns that's out there on the border of this thing, I will tell you, I've already had conversations with several of the officials from DeKalb County who are wondering, well, if Kendall County can get in, maybe we should get in, because we got Northern Illinois University and we got I-88 and we've got a lot of stuff out here that really should be included in this conversation. And they're one of the big growth areas starting to appear to be in place. So I just would encourage the staff to kind of keep an eye on what's happening there, because it's a political thing and we're not politicians supposedly in this room, but in the meantime, it just seems to be bigger and bigger and bigger. I could go into it and I don't need to do it, but I just wanted to bring that up as an issue, that something probably is going to have to be done, or this is going to be a political time bomb that somebody's going to step on, and some of what we're trying to do here may get derailed, no pun intended, on what is happening out there and it hasn't happened out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor, for your comments. Anyone else have any comments before we move on to the next item? No? Well, thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate your report.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So as we move to 6.4, the Century Plan update, Elizabeth Scott and Julie Reschke will present an update.
Hello. So we're changing gears a little bit with this piece. We're incredibly excited to give you all an update of where we are with the Century Plan. So as a reminder, one of CMAP's responsibilities is to periodically create a regional scale plan. Our previously adopted plan on 2050 was adopted in 2018, and we're in the process of making a new plan to replace it now. So, we've been talking to you all about how we are approaching the Century Plan, and I hope many of you were able to join us at our launch last fall, the State of the Region event in October. So the team has been in full swing since that time. We've been doing a lot of exciting things, and I wanted to just give you a bit of an update on some of the engagement activities that we've been doing, hearing from the region. And then in a second here, Julie will give you an overview of our first content deliverable from the planning process, the State of the Region report, which you have at your table. The purpose of this is to cultivate a broad conversation among regional leaders about what is going to matter for our future. So on one side of things, we have been out in the community talking to people about the issues of the day, the issues that we think may matter in the future. We started that process in February with an event in Lake County talking about housing supply and affordability. Next week, we'll have an event in Oswego that'll talk about the future of industry, managing utilities, potential for growth, what the region needs to maximize the opportunities in front of us. Further, we're going to have events all year talking about these type of issues with people, trying to really spark conversations about what is going to be most essential to our future. We anticipate having conversations about water, organizing ourselves for climate action, and then towards the summer, one that you all will be interested in and we'll make sure you're invited to, about the future of infrastructure. So we're trying to be out in the community having these kinds of conversations with people. We'll be traveling to all of the local councils in the region to talk to groups of communities about how some of this information is showing up locally. But we also have been doing research as we are wont to do to understand both what is the status of the region today. That's the report you have and that Julie's going to tell you a little bit more about. Next slide. But we've also been working with our consultants, Kerr Smith out of Toronto. You may recall last fall, they did a workshop at the joint meeting of you all and the board, talking about what can we anticipate in the 30-year future that is going to be disruptive and probably existential for the future of the region. So we're trying to understand what people feel is important, what data tells us about where we are strong and where we may be struggling now, and then understand what the far future could hold for us. And all of these things are ingredients to go into the direction of the Century Plan, which we'll be developing through the summer, and solidifying into a plan direction document to be presented this fall. And what you can anticipate in that is a summary of all of the things that we've heard and done to come to these conclusions, but essentially a short list of things that we think are going to be really important for the region to organize itself around together to make sure that we can secure the best version of our future. And so, connecting to that foresight workshop, you all and CMAP board gave the feedback that things that felt like they were crusting, going to be important to the future, were funding uncertainty, infrastructure challenges, affordability challenges, but also hopefulness around what we can do when the region collaborates together. And I think we also saw those themes come forward in the State of the Region analysis that we did. This product is meant to be accessible. We hope that you can open it to any page and find something that would be interesting and engaging. this is not our like deep wonkiness. This is trying to be conversation starter with people, welcome people into the conversation with us, start a conversation with them. So that's the spirit with which we present this information to you today, and hope that you'll be able to give us some thoughts too. So, Julie.
Hey, good morning again. Julie Reschke, Senior Policy Analyst here at CMAP. As Elizabeth just described, the State of the Region report is packed with an abundance of rich information that's intended to serve as an informative starting point for the Century Plan process. The report focuses on regional topics where we have levers that can move the needle, like transportation, economy, housing, climate, and more. To prepare this report, we looked at dozens and dozens of data points, but ultimately prioritized trends that are most impactful to the region's quality of life and future opportunities. And today I'm excited to share some high-level takeaways from this work. A major conclusion of the State of the Region report is that Northeastern Illinois possesses unique strengths that make us stand out nationally and give us a competitive advantage for continued growth. In particular, we benefit from expansive regional systems and assets like our transportation system, regional economy, and network of natural resources. These strengths are the result of generations of investment and strategic development. As we begin to look ahead to identify the future vision the region would like to achieve, these assets are worth maintaining and building off of. Next slide, please. Notably, the regional economy is expansive and diversified, standing out both nationally and globally. As of 2023, Northeastern Illinois had a gross regional product of $742 billion, surpassing the economies of 39 individual states and even entire countries like Ireland and Sweden. And if the region was a separate country, its economy would rank within the top 25 largest economies in the world. Our transportation network plays an integral role in making this a reality. Vast amounts of infrastructure across aviation, transit, roadways, freight, and maritime travel make us a hub that moves both people and economic goods. And when we look to some of our peers, many are spending billions of dollars to achieve what we have today. The region also has expansive natural resources that support local ecosystems, recreational opportunities, and climate resilience. In particular, we have extraordinary access to freshwater resources like Lake Michigan and a system of rivers, streams, and canals. This network of water resources is crucial for our environment, making essential contributions to natural habitats and the region's overall resilience to climate change. It also supports residents' quality of life and offers a relatively low-cost, low-emission way to transport goods that strongly contribute to our regional economy. And in addition to fresh water, we also have high-quality land resources. Just over half of the region's 2.6 million acres are used for agricultural and natural lands, with 200,000 acres set aside for forest and conservation districts. Having been protected and maintained over time, these resources help make Northeastern Illinois an attractive destination for both residents and businesses alike. And while these regional systems provide us with a strong foundation for future growth, some emerging trends present potential challenges. In recent years, there have been changes that might alter the infrastructure and services that local communities will need, tensions that may challenge the region's capacity for additional growth, and dynamics that compromise residents' quality of life. Understanding these emerging trends in greater detail can enable us as a region to coalesce around shared priorities and plan ahead for effective solutions. And so for the remainder of my presentation today, I'll provide a snapshot into some of these impactful trends. Mirroring national trends, the region is getting older. Between 2010 and 2023, the share of seniors aged 65 and older grew while the proportion of residents under 18 shrank, driving up the average age in Northeastern Illinois. Looking ahead, CMAP's socioeconomic forecast indicates that this trend is likely to continue for decades into the future. These changes have the potential to transform the infrastructure and services that residents need in their local communities. More seniors may need different types of housing or transportation services to comfortably age in place, and less children could mean changes to our educational systems with potentially long-term implications for sustaining our regional workforce. Forward-looking planning on this topic can support local communities in the broader region in anticipating necessary adjustments. Next slide. As previously stated, Northeastern Illinois has an expansive economy that continues to grow. In recent years, however, the region has grown more slowly than some of our peers and the nation overall. Part of this challenge is related to our strength of being highly diversified in the industries that support our economy. Our economic base is very broad and more closely reflects the overall US economy than other large metros. This dynamic does protect us from sector-specific downturns, but can slow recovery when there's broader economic disruptions. For example, it took our economy 6 years to recover from the 2008 recession, 4 years longer than the nation overall. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, the region's economy contracted by nearly 5%, which was more than other major metros like New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. Notably, sectors that contribute most to our economic competitiveness have struggled to rebound from these disruptions. Between 2015 and 2023, the region gained only 625 jobs in traded clusters, which export goods and services to national and global markets. Generally, growth in these clusters has an outsized impact in growing our economy and include industries like financial services, metal manufacturing, and life sciences. At the same time, we added nearly 95,000 jobs in local clusters, which support the needs of everyday residents and can generally be found in any region. These local clusters, like healthcare, retail, and vehicle repair shops, are valuable to local economies and support residents' quality of life. But an overwhelming skew to local clusters rather than traded ones can blunt the region's economic competitiveness on the international stage. So as we just discussed, local clusters have been experiencing most of the region's recent job growth. However, only a small share of these newly added jobs in these clusters offer a living wage to workers without a college education. This trend applies to the broader regional economy where jobs requiring bachelor's degrees or higher have grown significantly, while jobs requiring lower educational, or the jobs that have lower educational requirements have been on the decline. Today, 75% of jobs in the region that pay a living wage require at least a bachelor's degree, but only 44% of people in the region aged 25 and older have this level of education. While growth in high school careers has helped attract new, highly educated talent to the region, a lack of accessible living wage jobs is leaving some of our current residents behind. Transportation also plays a role in the jobs residents can access. In particular, the region's transit system is an asset to both workers and employers. 1 in 3 jobs in the region is within a half mile of a CTA or metro rail station, and in every county that has rail service, job density is higher near transit stations than countywide averages, demonstrating transit's ability to influence development. However, driving remains the most common way people get to work. In 2023, nearly 70% of commute trips were people either carpooling or driving alone. Vehicle ownership can be expensive, with the typical household spending nearly $10,000 annually on vehicle costs. But transportation is just one of multiple essential expenses that households have. And in recent years, many of these essential expenses have grown in cost. Between 2000 and 2023, the average cost of living in the region increased by 63%. While higher earning households have seen their incomes grow more than the general cost of living, those earning lower incomes have not. For households earning less than the regional median, the cost of essentials like food and medical care have outpaced their incomes. In particular, housing costs for both renters and homeowners have increased significantly. Between 2000 and 2023, home ownership costs increased by 80% and rents nearly doubled. And to round us out here with the snapshots, housing is commonly one of the largest expenses for most households. When people spend 30% or more of their incomes on housing-related costs, they are considered cost-burdened. Today, nearly a quarter of homeowners and a half of renters in the region are cost-burdened. And in more than 20 municipalities, roughly 3/4 of renters there are burdened by housing costs, highlighting widespread financial strain. But these challenges are not limited to just these communities. Relatively high rates of housing cost burden are seen in every county of the region. Housing affordability is exacerbated by the housing options that people have available to them. When there's a lack of mid-range options, residents struggle to find housing that meets both their needs and their household budgets. So just to round us out here, the data stories we walked through are just a snapshot of some of the information included in the full State of the Region report. We really hope these materials provide valuable insights about Northeastern Illinois' challenges and opportunities and serve as a productive starting point for some of the major conversations we'll have through the Century Plan process. For more information, you're invited to check out the link or the QR code on the screen or the printed materials at your tables. And with that, I might look to our executive director to understand if we have time for questions or comments.
Thank you so much for the report. I will open it up to the committee for any particular questions. But in the interim, I'll just, yes, question.
Thank you for the helpful analysis. Mary Nicolacita, I'm curious to what extent, as part of the planning process, you all have started to think about emerging transportation technologies and the impact it may have on the region.
Did you want to talk about, some work to come?
So this piece is kind of where we are today, but we also have an additional work stream. I think, as I was mentioning, we've hired some Canadian futurists to. I know it's a weird phrase to say, but we've hired some very knowledgeable people with an international footprint. They do this work around the world to help us think about how trends in technology, other disruptive forces, how will climate change affect us in 30 years? What can we expect from technology, both in our infrastructure and in our communities? What does it mean for jobs? All of that stuff. So that is the piece of the project where we're exploring that information, and those deliverables are just starting to come. So more to come.
So are there any thoughts toward any working groups, maybe also centered around transportation? Is that a possibility?
So right now we're having a really broad conversation, and as we get towards the fall, that's when we'll start convening more topical discussion groups, and I'm certain there will be ones about transportation.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you very much. We will move on to section 6.5, the legislative update.
All right, good morning, everyone. Kasha Hart, principal with our Intergovernmental Affairs team. Just a couple of federal and state legislative updates for you all. So beginning on the federal side with FY27 appropriations. A couple weeks ago, the House Appropriations Committee released their FY27 community project funding guidance. So members can start submitting their requests now, and requests are due by Friday, March 20th. Thank you to many of you and your staff who've reached out to us for letters of support for any requests that you have. Please do keep them coming, because I know that deadline is will be here before we know it. Then moving quickly to reauthorization. On the House side, we understand that base text for all titles has been drafted and is circulating between staff of majority and minority parties late March. So imminently, maybe April is the latest timeline that we have heard for markup and possible floor consideration. House T&I really does remain probably the most aggressive in their anticipated timing. Then on the Senate side, there are 3 different committees that have jurisdiction over different components of reauthorization. Senate EPW appears to be the furthest along in their drafting of their respective components. They have signaled intent to have language by April or May. And we have heard that they're placing a particular emphasis on permitting reform and project delivery. So clearly there's still a lot to do within both chambers and between both chambers. So, our current reauthorization does expire at the end of September. I think this does mean that the prospects of a continuing resolution are increasingly likely. I'll just share one item that we highlighted when we were in DC a couple of weeks ago is that IIJA set a really high floor for transportation funding, and we want to make sure that any future reauthorization retains that high floor. As we talked about earlier today in the RTP presentation, we clearly still do have a lot of need in our region. Moving us over to Springfield with a state update. So on the FY27 budget, the governor filed his FY27 budget proposal at the end of last month. He's proposing just over a $56 billion budget, which represents a 1.6% increase from last year. Most of that increase is in required areas like education and pension funding. Outside of that, new spending is just at 0.5%. Our team is doing an analysis now, and I'm happy to come back with more details when that's available. During the State of the State address, during which, the budget was revealed, the governor also showcased his new build proposal, which includes several housing, zoning, and permitting provisions intended to support some of the recommendations in the state's recent missing middle housing report, and designed to really accelerate housing production in the state. While each community has its own housing challenges and opportunities, housing also plays a really critical role in our regional economic competitiveness when it comes to attracting and retaining the workers that our region needs and supporting people at all stages of life. So we recognize zoning as just one of the many tools that we need to address our housing shortfall and, make sure we're addressing these broader quality of life considerations that we're talking about in several different forums, including the Century Plan, as you just heard from Elizabeth and Julie. So from here, these bills do need to proceed through the legislative process, beginning with committee hearings. Just wanted to offer an update on that since I know there's been a lot of discussion. And then one other item on the state side that we are following very closely, Representative Katz Mull filed House Bill 4689, which is a bill that would direct CMAP to assemble a report of legislative recommendations to the governor and General Assembly on the sufficiency, management, and governance of water in our region. It's our understanding that this would just focus on our Lake Michigan allocation, not groundwater resources, and the report would be developed in coordination with a new Northeastern Illinois Water Governance Advisory Committee. This is not a CMAP initiative, but we have been in touch with the bill sponsor and proponents to share our feedback on the scope, timeline, and approach. Most importantly, we've been clear that we do not have the funding to do this work, and so we would really need additional resources from the state if we are to make that happen. And we understand that amendments are in progress with that feedback in mind. Relatedly, a few weeks ago, we also had the opportunity to testify before the Senate Environment and Conservation Committee at a recent subject matter hearing on groundwater. So different but related topics. Water is clearly emerging as the big theme among the General Assembly this year. So we just presented some of the findings from our groundwater governance report to inform future committee deliberations and highlighted opportunities to strengthen regional collaboration on this issue. So just wanted to raise this here as it appears to be a growing issue of interest among the General Assembly. In terms of upcoming legislative milestones ahead, Senate bills are due out of committee tomorrow, so they're busy in Springfield right now having those hearings, and then House bills aren't due out of committee until March 27th. So they've left themselves a little bit more time. With that, happy to answer any questions folks may have.
I have a,
Yes, Mayor.
as most of you know, I've been the mayor for 45 years. And I will tell you that in my 45 years, I've never seen as much concern by all my fellow mayors in the state as I have in the last few weeks with the governor going down and announcing he wants to take control over local zoning. Boy, has that fired it up. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've now been asked to be at 6 or 7 meetings in the last 2 weeks. And I've been Zooming on them, but I haven't, but there's a lot of people, and that's an issue that's a keg of dynamite down there. And I hope the governor and the legislature got control over it, because I know there's already being arranged mass movements of all the mayors to Springfield in a couple of weeks in Springfield to go down and get in the face of the governor about this thing. I've never seen anything quite like it that's gotten so many people so concerned.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just mention, Mayor, we had a robust discussion on housing yesterday, I think spurred from what we're seeing at the state level, but I think also, there was a healthy balance of conversation about the fact that, we do want to grow our region and we do need to come up with some solutions here. So just sharing that the board is also concerned and interested.
I keep saying that CMAP is trying to wrap their arms around it and get some ideas that can be put forth. But boy, the governor's done a strike of magic. If he wanted to get things worked up, he certainly has done it. So I just offer that as an observation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kasha. Well, we've had a full agenda today, great information shared. Let's move on to other business. Is there any other business before the MPO Policy Committee this morning? No? Okay, well then we will move on to public comment. We'll take any public comments from individuals who are in the audience, first followed by remote participants. And I don't see anyone.
No, nobody in the room. I'll just note, I think we do have one online, but at your place this morning, we did receive 3 public comments, written comments prior to the meeting from Michael McCarthy, from Iad Olean, and Matthew Soper related to the North DuSable Lakeshore Drive project being on the RTP's constrained list. These will be attached as part of the official public record, but because we had them in advance, we wanted to make them available to each of you at your seat. So there are those that we'll file for the record.
Okay,
And then I
great.
do believe we also have Garland Armstrong online.
Okay, great. Well, we'll invite Garland into the space. Garland?
Hi, Gia, and everybody at MPO Policy Committee meeting. It's Garland Armstrong, formerly of Elmwood Park and Des Plaines, now living in Des Moines, Iowa. How you doing, everybody?
We're doing well, Garland. Good morning.
All right, just want you to know I'm still celebrating. A couple of weeks ago, I turned 60, and I'm still celebrating my 60th birthday. So I'm here at Applebee's in West Des Moines. So, and I just want to say to Mayor Mayor Shelkey, you 45 years, unbelievable, Mayor Jeffrey Shelkey. You are certainly a rock star, but I'm deeply concerned. I pray that one day, when you said you have definitely finished your term, that you should definitely take a vacation, because I don't want you to be there forever till the day you die, because my biggest concern is for you, because you got a better life after being on there for 45 years, because you are certainly a rock star, not only for CMAP, MPO, and PACE, but you're totally incomparable, irresistible, and immortal mayor of them all. So I just want to give kudos to you from me and Heather, and you're in our hearts.
Thank you.
Yep. Mayor. And then and one day just say that you've done it all, and you don't want to be there forever. Just tell it to everybody, and you've done it all. And also too, I just hope the ADA really understands this, because they really needs to make sure about the policy, even for those who cannot, how to translate, Google it in other languages, so that they'll know what is what, so that if they want to help out too. So you make sure to stay on top of it, and make sure that the ADA will not be left behind. So that's all I have to say. But my wife, Heather Armstrong here, want to say something. Hold on.
Hi, y'all. My name
Heather.
is Heather Armstrong. I also live in Des Moines. I make it a suggestion of what Illinois should do. Give the Chicago region and also the northern part of Illinois to Wisconsin, because Wisconsin's got more services than Illinois, and they got better finances too than Illinois. Because the main reason why we left Illinois is because lack of services, versus here and in Wisconsin, where they would have lower taxes too. Because Illinois is way too over budget. They're not even on budget. They're way over budget. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't think we have any other comments remotely, correct? Okay. All right. Well, we will conclude comments, but before, happy birthday again, Garland. And
Thanks.
at this, you are so welcome.
I think she's bringing another Diet Pepsi for you.